what does the Orthodox Church teach about tithing? In a lot of Protestant churches, it is expected that you tithe 10% for every paycheck, and that is a big aspect of your faith as a whole. And so that comes before everything, including house payments or anything else that there may be. Tithing comes before. So what does the Orthodox Church teach about that?
But if they require that you actually tithe, isn't that works? Isn't that part of works? And so if you are saved by faith alone, why should you be tithing? Why should you be required to do such a great sacrifice? In a way, that's a good question. Okay, and I raise that because I have found nowhere in the early Christian documents, nowhere in the early Christian church, where tithing is required by Christians. But you know what was required? To give their whole lives. Their whole lives, 100% of their lives. And Christians understood that as they died for the faith, as they were persecuted and they were arrested and tortured and they were killed. They gave 100%, not 10%. So that's my one response. The other response is that the Jews were asked to tithe in the Old Testament because there was an entire tribe, the Levites, that owned no land. The other tribes owned land. The land was divided among the other tribes, except for the Levites. And the Levites didn't have any land because they were set apart so that they can serve at the temple. So that they had no other income except whatever the other tribes would bring them. That was the way that they supported their families, and that was the way that they were able to dedicate their lives to serving the temple. And these were the priests and the Levites, the servants of the temple. They were the teachers as well. They were the ones dedicating their lives in studying the scriptures, in teaching the people, in receiving people for confession, in helping people to bring the sacrifices onto the altar. And this was an entire tribe. And the only way to support those people was by tithing. So once we move from there into the Christian period, after the temple is destroyed, that requirement of tithing completely goes away naturally because there is no temple and there is no Levite group. There is no tribe serving at the temple, and there is no need to bring gifts and sacrifices, and there is no need to actually pay for those people to live at the temple. And then during the Christian period, even after we have the establishment of the priesthood, the Christian priesthood now, which the Christian priesthood is seen as the continuation of the Jewish priesthood, of the Aaronic priesthood, and the Christian priesthood is seen as the continuation of what was happening at the temple, because now every Christian church is a temple to God. All right. So now the priests are being supported by the people, so the people bring their gifts to the church, and they bring their gift to support the clergy, the priests. But there was never a requirement for 10%, because now the requirement is the total dedication of our lives to God. Of course, once we move into the period when the church it grows and the Christian Roman Empire is created after Constantine opens the doors of freedom for the Christians, and the Christians are able to convert the entire Roman Empire, then we have the wealthier Christians, which was the case in the earlier times as well, bringing in more money than anybody else, because there was a lot of poverty at the time, to support the churches and to build the churches and to build temples and and to support the clergy. Now, that was the case, as I said earlier on, because in the early church, in the agape meals were held at the homes of the rich, and the food for that evening was supplied by the rich, and the poor in the community were not required to bring anything. So, where does the tithing come into the Christian world? It comes after the Reformation, when the Reformed churches now, they needed support. So they went back to the Old Testament. They said God required the Jews to give 10% of all their income. Therefore, we need now to have support, because the kings are not there to help us, because the governments are not there to help us. Then we need support. And this becomes more profound and more pressed upon the people, the Protestant people in the United States, where there is no government to support them, while in Europe there was. So the 10% came in handy because it was a lot of support to keep the churches going. And so that was established. For us Orthodox, it's kind of a foreign concept, and that actually has harmed us in some way to help us grow financially. But at the same time, it's also foreign because I don't think it should be enforced as a requirement from Christians, but Christians should understand better how their church needs to be supported, and they should give as much as they can proportionally to their income. And that's their job and their responsibility to figure out in front of God in faith. So their faith should guide them. How important is their church to them? And they can give even more than 10%. And there are some people who give a lot more than 10% in the Orthodox Church, who have money and who are able to do. And that's how we exist today in the United States.